when you love your body and when you like start feeling that, there's power in that. Like it gave me a lot of power.
Wow.
It helped me show up in the world. And yeah, I started to not feel shameful about things that made me feel good. I started realizing that pleasure was like vibrancy juice.
Welcome to the From Within podcast with Ben Osterveld. Hey guys, welcome to From Within, the podcast. I have a guest, very special guest, one of a kind person, Mia Lockhart. She's from, where are you from? Nova Scotia right now?
Wolfville, Nova Scotia. Yes.
Very cool. Very cool. We are, I guess, how do we know each other? I went to Peru and I met your husband climbing Machu Picchu. And I connected there. And then I think just in our circles of knowing people, I've seen you, but I just listened to the One Last Talk. So I guess we'll do a little plug for that right away. One Last Talk, the podcast. I don't know what episode number you are. It's usually the names are kind of held back, but I listened to your story and I didn't know that's what you were all about. And it really hit home. And that's why you're on the show today, because I'd love to help you share your story. I think you can help a lot of people. So that's why you're here. So thank you so much for being on the show, Mia.
Really nice to be here. I'm looking forward to our conversation. And my One Last Talk is called I'm Not an Obedient Woman. So that's the one.
That's like the best title. It's got fire to it. Hey, the women are like writing this down right now. I'm like, that is good. No, I love that. I'm not an obedient woman. I love that so much. I'm a little rebellious though. So I like those kind of things. So Mia, why don't we just get stuck right in? Let's just get stuck right in. What I know is just our conversation we had just now before we started recording. And then I also know your story through One Last Talk. So if you're comfortable with it, I'd love to for you, I don't know, give your one last talk is not what I'm saying, but just tell the people your story.
Okay. I'll give the condensed version.
Sure. We got time.
Okay. And my One Last Talk premise is this, and that the whole purpose of a One Last Talk is to share the moments in your life where you really pivoted. So hard times and then how you changed from them. So my One Last Talk took me, I shared the story of being raised in a very, very fundamental Christian religion. So I was raised in a large family and definitely infused with all those Christian beliefs right from the beginning. And as a young girl, especially, it was really hard for me to listen to the messages about women and girls and how we're supposed to be. Even as young as 10, I remember listening to preachers talking about, even the length of hair we were supposed to have and how we're supposed to wear it and how we're supposed to, the place of women is to be quiet and to serve their husbands in the church. And it's just a very different story for girls than boys. So that was me as a girl definitely noticed that. And it kind of created, first of all, I just wished I was a boy at first, because that would have been easier. And because I didn't really fit in that pattern right from the beginning. I was kind of a stubborn, outspoken little girl. And so being told that the ultimate goal for women is to be, quiet and submissive, and your role is to really just support the men in your life and in the church, and also, be a part of that system. It didn't feel good even as a little girl. I was like, what?
Something's not right.
Yeah, I had dreams of being like, I looked at Chatelaine magazine covers and I was like, I want to be an entrepreneur. And I was very, very much like wanting to be, strong and powerful and wanted to embrace those messages, and definitely didn't feel that in the church. And so, as early as 12, I had, we talked about this a little bit, I had kind of a rebellious spirit. And it's hard when you're in a big family and in a religion, because everything is quite monitored, your lifestyle and your belief system. And I knew that if I wanted to please my parents, I had to do what we were supposed to do as far as like dress and even, how you spoke in the gatherings. We had quite set out roles on what we were supposed to do. And so when I was 12 and started reading Harlequin romances and wanted to have sex and wanted, to get a boyfriend, I also looked at my body and wasn't happy with my body. So I started rebelling, and when I reflect on it now, it was a lot about control too. That was one thing I could control, was my own body, when I didn't have control over much else in my life. So I stopped eating, and I mean, secretly, and it got worse and worse. And in the progression of like 8 or 10 months, I was anorexic.
How did you get away with not eating? Because I'm sure that
Well,
they were just controlling environment in some level. You
yeah,
eat.
oh, definitely.
How did you get away with that?
Well, the good thing, it was a big family too. So, you can take food and then not eat it, or like quickly slide it away, that kind of stuff. And
Gotcha.
lie about what you're eating, and just
Mm,
hide as much as you can. I mean, I would go, yeah, I was definitely, I could go through a day and maybe eat one egg white or something like that at that time.
mm.
Um, and so there is the benefit of a big family too. You can slide
Kind
under.
of hide it. Yeah,
And
yeah.
the more I figured out ways to do that, the more I felt in control of myself, that it was
Interesting.
one thing I could control. So and that is the progression of an eating disorder too. So um, I got fully diagnosed with anorexia, and it was serious. So that was a big lesson in my life that has played out later on too in my work I do now. But in that, I kind of got that taste of, just even honoring the fact that I didn't feel in control of my life. So I was sick, but thankfully, with a lot of medical help and that, I got into sports instead. So
Interesting.
that was a big saving grace for me in my teen years, because it was a place where I could be free. I could be,
Hmm.
I could wear shorts instead of skirts all the time. I could be a little bit wild and crazy. And I really, it was kind of a big outlet for me. So it was hugely therapeutic. And I really, in that process, started to, eat to play, and I feel like I had different outlets, which was huge at that time. Yes, I would go and play rugby and be with friends and be wild on the field. I was allowed to do that, but then come Sunday, you're like in church, and you still, like, I never wore pants the whole time in high school or anything like that. Like, I would look different in school, but not on the sports field. So that was a big thing for me.
Interesting. Yeah. Wow. Interesting.
And I really embraced sports during high school, and it helped.
What sports did you play? Just curious.
I played volleyball, basketball, soccer, rugby.
Wow.
Yeah, I tried to be in pretty much everything. I had a lot of fun. Yeah.
And so
So
what was driving you was that this is the place where you could actually express yourself?
yeah, and I felt strong and I felt good, and I also,
Confident.
yeah, confidence was huge. And I always had this driving feeling like I wanted to prove that I could do anything guys could do. So I often play soccer
Wow.
guys and rugby, because and I showed them I could do it too. Like, so that, yeah, I would find places where I could prove that girls can do anything boys could do. So it was always trying to, like,
Were
reinforce
you
that.
conscious of that thought, or is that something that you found later on that you look
I,
back and you're like, oh, that's what I was doing? Or during the time you're like, were you aware of
I
that?
I think it was more reflection, although I do get even reading through my yearbook on the comments and stuff like that. I definitely had that vibe going with me, that I was like, one, like, to go out and prove that girls could do, anything, like.
Yeah.
So I was kind of definitely in that mindset. And even leaving high school, I went into college. I didn't really pick something I really wanted to do, but I picked something that no girls were in. So I took
Wow.
mechanical engineering, and it was subconscious. Like, I thought I kind of wanted to do it, but really I didn't. I wasn't really into
Yeah.
it, but I was proving that I could do it. So here I am in a class at BCIT with like over, 400 people or
Man.
something, and there's 3 girls, and just that whole, like, yes, I can do this too. So it was definitely part of that whole need to prove. Yeah. So it was still in that vibe. But at the same time, I was still very like, trying to fit in with the religion and figure out where I could fit in it. Because, I mean, it's your belief system. It's what your
Yeah.
family believes. It's all
It's truth in your mind.
yeah, it's the truth. And that is
Yeah.
the founding beliefs of it. It's the truth. That mindset that this is the only right way and everyone else is
Yeah.
going to hell.
Totally
And
get it.
you stray, you're going to be lost, and yeah, your life will go way downhill if you don't keep, at least following the
Straight
way,
and narrow.
the straight and narrow. And even your thought, like
Yeah.
all your thoughts are bad. Like,
Yeah.
so
Hold,
even
hold
my
thoughts,
dream,
hold captive your thoughts. Yeah.
yeah, even my dreams of, having, like, doing business or like being an entrepreneur, and that it was like kind of shameful, because really the place for me was, to get married and have kids and to fit into that mold. That was the ultimate.
So
uh,
you've got all this, you've got every sport in the book you're playing. Okay.
yeah.
You've got this drive to prove that women can do everything that men do. So what happens next?
Well, I was 19. I graduated early. Like, I was really driven and did this
Yeah, it sounds
mechanical
like it.
engineering course. But yeah, I met my husband in the religion, and well, we dated for a year and got married. I was 19, so young marriage, which is really encouraged.
For sure.
And um and it, at that point, it was really like, okay, I guess this is it. I guess, i'm I'm following the path. Like, I'll have to somehow squash this other stuff, because
It's so sad. Yeah.
yeah, this is the path I'm going. And so yeah, we got married young, and I got pregnant like within a year. So in those next few years, of course, I was really busy with having babies. I had 4 kids in the next 6 years. So that kind of took up a lot of my time and energy.
Yeah.
Still filling that place. But I will say that it was really interesting for me when I got pregnant, because it was the first time I like actually honored the fact that I was female. And
Oh,
I
wow.
started to like my body and appreciate the feminine parts of me, which was an awakening for me. It was so, and now, like, and that is in reflection, because I'd spent so many years of my childhood, fighting my body, either controlling it or trying to be as tough as the boys and prove I could do anything. That was finally like, when I was pregnant and just like somewhat enjoying the process. I did enjoy being pregnant, and like it was the start of like actually loving being female and my
Wow.
body. Even though, I'll be honest, like as a mother, there's a lot of roles that get very traditional very quickly as soon as you have babies. And sometimes that would get to me, because it was very much like,
Because you're
now
like,
it's
I will not
full
be put
time,
in the box.
full time at home, and babies, and barefoot and pregnant. It was like all of a sudden that was my reality, and I hadn't really come to peace with that. At the
Wow.
same time, I was starting to embrace my body and starting to learn a bit more. And through that study, and by the time I'd had my 4th kids too, and started reading more about bodies and appreciating, like just started really actually falling in love with my body, learning a lot more. That's when I had my next rebellion. And it was on this whole journey of like, understanding that pleasure was good. And I'll be honest, like getting married young and not having any sex education and not all of that, I had to learn on my own basically. And it took a while. It took lots of books. It was not talked about in our house at all. And of course, like no masturbation talks, that
Yeah.
was simple.
Sin.
And so I had to learn from romance novels. That's pretty much it. So that there's a lot left out in those books growing up. So,
Fabio doesn't do it, eh? Fabio's not the model or what?
so and you know what? Yeah, like just learning of course it wasn't terrible, but it was these books that all of a sudden opened up all these new ideas of like, just even, women like really appreciating their bodies and how pleasure is so healthy, and taking the time to take care of yourself. All those messages started to feed in, because I had literally, you have 4 little babies, you have no life either, pretty much.
5, yeah.
You've been there.
100%.
So in that study, I started. First got myself a vibrator finally, and then like felt empowered. I wanted to start a business because it was time. I was like raring to go, and so I started a vibrator business. But not just like a party company. I like sourced the best vibrators, and this was let's see, in 2005 or 6. So it's pretty early in the internet days. Sourced the best vibrators, set up an online vibrator company that was all about educating women, all about like teaching about pleasure. And it was pretty early for its time, actually. And I also created a catalog and started doing these parties in homes, which was so interesting. All this time I was still in the religion, going on Sunday mornings to church, and somewhat feeling bad because I'm like talking about, trying to be following this model of what I should be. But at the same time, then I'm having these vibrator parties, which I like kept secret from everybody.
I think it's the best story ever. I love it. So give me a picture here. So you go to church. Are you in like women's groups? Are you going to like Bible studies? Like, what did that look like?
Really, our churches are pretty simple. And I had grown up in Vancouver, which it was a lot bigger group of people that we met together, a lot bigger social circle. But I married my husband and moved to Nova Scotia. And so it's a lot smaller here. So our church group was like very small. We'd meet in homes on Sundays and Sunday nights and have gospel meetings.
So it's pretty intimate then.
So it's pretty intimate. There wasn't a lot of like social part of the church, which probably, helped me. Like I had my own life going in a different direction.
I see. Gotcha. And then, so give me a picture of these parties now. So you go to this little home church, and it's very much the long dress kind of idea. And then you go to this other party. How did you advertise? Like, you just like vibrator parties? Like how do you, like, I'm just trying to think, like, someone's going to see this. Like, how did you balance that?
Well, I did online advertising, and it was often through conversations. I was part of some like maybe entrepreneurial groups. In the local community. So I was giving out business cards.
Cool.
And I would roll in with my 2 big massive suitcases full of stuff, and we would sit around, and I talked a lot about pleasure and about the importance of taking care of yourself and loving your body.
Yeah.
And some of these circles, it just always surprised me, because there would be women in their 50s and they'd never had an orgasm in their life. And they always were like, well, it's my husband's just wants me to just lie there and I just take it because it's part of my duty as being a wife. And all these, these different stories and of like women, just with abuse, and just how therapeutic it was for them to actually take the time to get to know their bodies. And so these conversations, I was new to the conversation. It wasn't like I was educated, but for whatever reason, I had like this huge passion to like share my newfound like excitement for because I understood now like how when you love your body and when you like start feeling that there's power in that, like it gave me a lot of power. It helped me show up in the world. I started to not feel shameful about things that made me feel good. I started realizing that pleasure was like vibrancy juice. Like I called it the Vibrant Woman Project. Like my goal was to just have more vibrant women alive and full of pleasure in life, because I just saw I also saw a projection of like the reality as I did look at, women that were in the church growing up, and the progression of just like losing vibrancy
Yeah. Like the
and
light is dulling.
yeah. And
Hmm.
I definitely didn't want that. So
So,
I,
sorry, go ahead.
no, you go ahead. Yeah.
I was just thinking like, so when did you get caught? Like, you know what I mean? Like you're hiding it. So like
Yeah.
it's a weird because you're shining your light as bright as you can, but you can't.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like it's like you're just so free, and that's kind of schizophrenic in a way where it's like you're two people.
Yeah.
When did that stop?
Okay. So, well, I remember one story. Like I actually had two sites, which was probably a good friend. Like one was about fitness for moms, a little bit of like motivation to stay in shape and love your body that way. So that was open with my family. And,
Gotcha.
but then I had a link on that site,
Uh,
just like an ad on the side panel, because we did lots of ads in those days. And one of the ads was for this Violet's Closet. That was the name of the company, Violet's
cool.
Closet.
Love it.
And so it was in the closet, of course, too.
Yeah, that's true. Isn't that funny? Yeah.
Anyway, so one day I was talking to my mom, and she was like, "Why do you have a link to vibrators on your site?" And I was like, "Well, because they're good." And she was like, "That's private. Like people's sex lives are
Oh yeah.
private. You
Oh
shouldn't.
yeah.
We
Yeah,
don't need
yeah.
to into that." Like,
I grew up with the word
I
sex is bad. Yeah,
yeah.
same kind of thing in the religious side. Yeah.
So the reality is, I didn't say anything. I didn't.
See, was it like you're just kind of throwing it out there just to kind of start normalizing it,
Yeah,
or?
that was. I think it was definitely a feeler.
Yeah.
The reality is, I never came out with it, like outright. I ended up.
Oh wow.
Um, that's one. That's part of the one last talk.
Oh,
No.
so this is happening right now. Oh, we are facilitating that for you right
uh,
now on this as well. Then
I did.
has your family heard your one last talk?
Yes. Well, interestingly, I know they have, but we have not had a
Yeah.
conversation. So
Yeah. Well, I
it
know
was.
I actually did one last talk, it wasn't called one last talk. It was the first one in Toronto, and I gave my one last talk, and it was called burn. It was called dying. It was called something, I don't know, but in my mind, it was like burn your faith kind of conversation to see if it's
Yeah.
real, like put it on the fire. And
Yeah.
I know for a fact, no one in my family listened to it. They
Yeah.
don't want, it's that feeling, right? They're like, they don't want to, it's like, oh my goodness. But yeah,
Well,
same kind of thing. If they heard it, I'm like, holy crap. Like, what
yeah.
would they do? You know?
That's the same idea, like because I always wanted to please my parents. That's the
For sure.
huge part of programming, especially too, like you please God, you please your parents. It's a big
Totally.
deep
Totally.
path that comes from a very early age. That that's a path to heaven, is pleasing those people. But
Totally.
so I ended up, I did talk to a friend who was in the religion,
Okay.
but she was so uncomfortable with it, very uncomfortable with it. Even the word, like even talking about masturbation or,
Yeah.
anyways, orgasms and that kind of scared me a little bit, because she was,
Just a reaction. You're like,
just
holy
a
crap.
reaction. I was like, holy, okay. So I was getting more and more comfortable with these
Yeah.
conversations.
Yeah.
And so that was a temperature gauge, and I was like, oh, okay. So it would be pretty bad to just be super open about this. So I actually, in that process, in that time, my husband was questioning the religion at the time. I was still
That's
pretty,
right. Where was Steve in all this? That's
yeah,
interesting. I never thought of that, because I know that you guys are together now, but it's like,
yeah.
yeah, what happened there?
So
Did Steve know you were doing all this?
oh yeah, yeah,
Okay.
yeah. He's a fan. What husband wouldn't be? I mean,
You're like, I
sexual
love
awakening
this.
life
Yeah,
is
yeah.
a good thing.
Well, in the religion, you don't know though. It could be
No,
like
that's
my
true.
wife's sinning. So
True. No, no. Steve was questioning the religion in his own ways, and
gotcha.
he actually left before me. I was still
Oh
very,
wow.
yeah. So he stopped going, and I kept going, which shows my stubbornness a bit. I have four
Hmm.
kids. He got Sunday mornings off. I took all the little kids by
Were
myself.
you resentful at him because of that?
Yep. Yeah.
Yeah.
Oh my god. Especially when I came
Yeah.
home and he's like hanging out in the backyard having a nice, and I've like
Wow.
almost started crying because I'm trying
Do
to
you know how
keep
much work I've
it.
had to do and all this?
Yes. And he's like, you don't have to go. But I was really clear that I didn't want to quit just because he did. I didn't want
You wanted to
to,
be independent.
yeah, I wanted to
Yeah.
make an independent choice. And
Awesome.
so also that feeling too, like, and even that goes into the religion too of like, mm, yeah, if people stop just because their partner stopped or whatever, like just, there's a lot of mindset around that. Like
Huge.
I didn't want to do it just because he did, or just to follow his steps either. So I kept going for at least another year. And so I was doing this vibrator business and taking my 4 kids and trying to figure out how I could mesh, like still stay in the approval
Yep.
place of religion,
Totally.
but still I'm starting to feel more and more just empowered. And finally, yeah, it just became too much. I couldn't like, they didn't balance out. Like
No match.
praying
No
to be
match.
submissive. Yeah, like praying to be
That's what
submissive.
I'm wondering. Like, how did you do
And
this? Right.
yeah, it's really hard to be two things, and
Yeah.
it started to wear me down. But I was so afraid. I remember the night that, because my husband, we'd had conversations, right? And he never pushed me
Yeah.
either way. He was like, you need to make your decision. I'm not going to push you to, yeah, like he had his certain beliefs. But I remember the night that I decided I was going to Google our religion, and
So you hadn't done
I
that?
hadn't done that.
Wow. So
No,
hold on. So you're 20 now, some with a bunch of
yeah, like
kids.
28.
You
Yeah.
literally have not even Googled what your
No,
religion
because
was.
that's sin. That's
So,
really scary. Like I remember my hand shaking,
wow. I know exactly what you're feeling.
like going into Google and being like, the truth, the way, finding out, and then
What
starting
this
to
is.
read. And yes, the history of the religion was interesting, but I'll be honest, like the things that really fired me up, again, it was about, sexual abuse that was hidden, and,
Wow.
accounts and those kind of
Yep.
things that come up,
Yeah.
and those stories. And I was like, okay, I can't handle this.
That's the
Like
tipping point for you.
that was
The
a big,
internet.
yep, the internet. Not only that, it felt like I'd been lied to the whole time,
Yeah.
as far as
Yeah. I know what that
this
feels
was
like
the
too.
way from Jesus and this is the only way and blah, blah, blah.
Yeah.
But also all this hidden stuff, and even of like ministers that I knew and things that
Mm.
had been in our home, and they'd done some pretty terrible things. And just
Actual
that,
people that you knew you found on the internet with a rap sheet.
yeah. And that my
Wow.
parents like probably maybe knew,
Yeah.
and like, just all that stuff that
Yep.
just, it
That
just
fired you up.
started crawling under my skin. I was like, oh, I can't. And, the thought of raising my kids in that
Hmm.
was like, okay, I'm at this point, I'm hiding a lot of myself now and not being authentic. You start reading and learning more. And then, yeah, thinking of my kids, and even like the thought, okay, maybe, like, just, I don't want to ever have my kids hide from me. That was my big thing. I was like,
Yeah.
I
Yeah.
don't to have,
Totally.
like, what if they're gay? What if they're whatever? Which I want to welcome, and I want them to feel totally
Like
and
safe.
safe, and I want
Yeah.
them to dream. And all the shame I felt about like dreaming different things than what the religion had planned for me. Um, I didn't want my girls to have to deal with that. I didn't want my boys to have to deal with that. That
Amazing.
shame is like, it's worse than, I don't know. It's
I'd
so,
rather be punched in the face 50 times, to be honest with you, than having shame. Like 100%, like it's like getting hit, nothing. Shame is deadly, and guilt and shame. These are immobilizing for tens of 20s of years. You can just sit with this and just screws you up for a long time. I know that feeling. I
yeah.
get it. It's definitely don't want to do that with our kids, right?
Uh-huh. And so, yeah, searching on Google, learning about the religion, and finally deciding, no, I can't do this anymore. And it was super scary. And I was really scared to tell my parents. I was, the first of us 6 kids, to tell her. And my mom was really upset.
Well, she probably pictured you going to hell.
Yeah, she said, yeah, she pictured me going to hell. She, you know, pictured our relationship falling apart. She pictured
Yeah.
my
It's like
kids alive.
self-proclaimed
Like,
prophecy.
yeah, think of your kids. Like
Yep.
that kind of, that's a huge guilt thing. Like,
Huge.
um, and I really, it took a while. That was really, that felt like death. There was a big, it was
Hmm.
almost like a
Like a
year.
mourning process.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
I like felt heavy in my heart. Like it was like that part of me had died,
Yeah.
and I had to grieve it a bit. Like, cause it's like the way you see the world completely changes. Even though it was a slow process, like I was starting to, you know, I had already seen, like I definitely had switched that belief that this is the only way and everyone else is wrong. But like really extricate yourself from like that belief that, you
It's like your
know,
identity. It's like your identity has to die. Yeah. And you got to find yourself. Yeah.
find yourself again and like understand that no, you're not innately evil, and there's so many good people in this world, and there's
Yes.
so much
Yes.
right. And there was, and you know, and I had been doing that in these circles with these women and other groups, like started to really connect with people and have deeper conversations than I'd ever had with anybody.
And real, right?
And
Real.
real.
I know. I went through the same process. It's like you meet someone and you're like, how like this. So obviously we know that like I had a pretty extreme upbringing in religion too. It's different, but it's very similar. I remember looking at people and I'm like, man, they're all going to hell. Wow. Like and like to really like
Nice
wow.
people, but
And I
they're
remember thinking like they got the devil's got these guys. And then it started like and then you start really getting to know people and you're like, these are great people. These are great people.
like
There's
how
no like it all falls apart once you start questioning. And I think at that point, I think sometimes even the guilt around questioning, we've been trained for even if it's not religion, like even for the people listening, there's this, it's just even like saying, you know, just a simple belief system of women's role or, you know, and we've got massive racism here. You could grow up thinking black people are negative or Jewish people. Like these are just things. It's not religion. It's just that we've been adopted beliefs. You know what I mean? We adopt them. And
yeah.
I think the people that are the most scared to challenge them are the people that don't believe. I think that when the people that are like, I will know, and they defend every single thing, they defend their faith, they defend their stance. Those are the people I believe with all my heart don't believe what they're saying.
Or
Because
there's yeah.
why defend something that you believe in?
Mm-hmm.
You don't need to defend it. But these people are like trained to defend and fortify their beliefs because I don't believe they're theirs. It
Yeah.
scares the crap out of people to look at something that's like, think about unwinding your entire life. Every single thing is touched by this. Your whole life falls apart. So they're like, screw that.
Yeah, the like the neural paths you create in your early years, especially, um, that unwinding process too is shakes up your whole reality. Like you think these belief systems that you got at age, you know, 2, 3, 4, you started really latching onto them. Those are deep in your, and so all of a sudden you take out those paths, you feel like you don't have anything to hold on to, and you start. But the nice thing is then you can start trusting yourself versus your
Yes.
belief system.
Yes. The entire thing is that's the side effect that I've learned is in religion, you don't trust yourself. It's like literally one of the most core values is that I can't trust myself. And that is like the most unstable internal game ever. Like it's insanity. Do you know what's
Yeah.
funny? Yeah, go ahead. No, you go.
Well,
You go.
I was gonna say, and that, you know, even the loving your body and loving
Mm,
your being, like the messages, especially for women, like the body is like a tempestuous, you know, carnal. It was always the
mm,
enemy of godliness. Like you know, pleasure, a woman's
yeah.
body, and she was a temptress right from the beginning. That
Yeah.
story has been
Delilah.
embedded
Yeah.
in it. Yes, totally.
100%. Like, yeah,
So
you know, like careful, careful. Yeah. It's always be careful. So
yeah,
I
and
remember, I think about these belief systems, Mia, and it's like one time I was watching my daughter. And so, you know how even the smallest thing, and this is why it's like, I know we have an extreme story, but I really think I want to connect the dots so bad for people to realize doesn't have to be extreme. This is everybody. And I think we as people that want to become true versions of the true authentic version of ourselves, this beautiful being that you're designed to be, I feel like it's just it's everywhere. And here's an example. Like I think about, we teach our kids like, oh, let me kiss that better. Okay. So they hurt themselves here. Give them a little kiss. It's all better now. Okay. So it's just a game and it's just nice. It's enduring. But even that, one day I saw my daughter really hurt herself. And she's like, can you kiss it? Can you kiss it? And I kissed it. She goes, it's not working, Dad.
Yeah.
And I was like, holy crap. She really believes the kiss heals. And I was like, whoa, I'm forming this belief system around her, this kissing. I know it's nothing. And everyone can just be like, oh, no big deal. But it's talking about this with you. It's like, man, even the smallest little things create this childhood belief that if you kiss it, it gets better. I know that eventually you let go of that, but it was just interesting to see how deeply she believed what I said. And then she had to somehow grow past it. And what happens at a subconscious level when like, well, I thought you told me that it was going to heal me. And I was like, oh no, Daddy's not being truthful. Like it almost was like kind of, because I've gone through being, I feel, lied to and totally about most things in my life. And it's like, you realize that's not true. Oh, that's not true. What were you trying to do to me then? You're trying to keep me a certain way?
Good faith, but
yeah,
it seems
totally.
like it's not malicious, but it's definitely impactful, and the trajectory can be, it definitely forms like big, it can change.
Yeah, I love that. The trajectory is just like click, like it just, or maybe a subtle, like these are like old, right? That subtle, like, oh, I can't trust him. Like if you think about it, all it takes is that you told me you kissed healing. He heals me, but it's nothing. It's like, whoa, that could be a trust moment. Like, so I'm like big on honesty, like raw, like, yep, sorry, it won't heal you, but it'll make you feel better if I kiss it. Just a little bit of an adjustment so I can keep trust with my kids. Because when you've been lied to by your family, religion, and it feels that way, and they don't mean to a lot of times, but yeah, that's something it's like I'm super sensitive about as well. Do you find that as well regarding people telling you the truth?
Yes. And, we were pretty honest with our journey, because my oldest was 10 when I stopped. And so she was actually actively involved in the church already, like saying her own little piece in the meetings. And, she actually got mad at us at first because her whole life changed too. Like it
10 years, you're starting to form for real.
Yeah, she was very formed in it. So but we were pretty honest with them. And we keep that, like, we don't have a desire for our kids to like completely judge against religion or for it,
but choose.
Like, choose what good, like match it up with you first.
Yeah. How do you feel? That's the question I try to ask my kids. Like, it's like, well, you shouldn't do that. I don't like that. I'm like, how does that make you feel? I said, you have to learn how to listen to your gut, because your gut's going to tell you exactly what you should do. I can't tell you what to do. And they're like, you're my dad. I'm like, yeah, you do whatever you want. But the biggest thing is you got to listen to that little voice inside of you, because you're going to have the right direction that way. I'm like constantly on this now. And it's really cool to see them grow.
Yeah, because that intricate piece that I think I missed, and probably you did in religion, is that trusting yourself piece.
That's sacrilegious.
You can start that young,
like
how beneficial it is, because that's the relearning that happens when you start getting rid of all these old beliefs, is like the ability to trust yourself, listen to your intuition, and then trust what you feel. And that, it's weird to learn that as an adult versus imagine learning it as a kid, like
totally
that you feel it and know it. So it was interesting, just my oldest really noticed the difference. My other kids, they're
young still.
They were still young enough, and thank goodness, like to be honest, it feels like leaving religion, leaving that pattern, it feels like the gift I gave my children too. Like I give it to myself, but I think of my grandkids, and it almost makes me cry because they won't know that. I mean, they'll be choosing, hopefully, this pattern of trusting yourself. Like if my children take it on and they can pass it on, like that freedom, they won't even have, like, it will just be a distance.
It's not there. Yeah.
It won't.
I totally get it. So Mia, tell me about this. Girls on boards. What's this? What's this girl on boards? I see you on Facebook, And I think this is cool. So what is this new? Is it how long are you doing it? What is it? Girls on boards.
Okay, so fast forward like 10 years from, the vibrator company, and I did sell it and moved on, and raising my teenagers. And so 3 years ago, I started to go into my story a little bit more. I was blogging a bit, and at the time, me and our family, we were in Costa Rica for a few months too, taking some space. And so I have teenage daughters that I've been watching because I had an eating disorder. I was super aware of that.
Oh,
We had
interesting.
lots of conversations, but I aware of, pressure, body pressure especially, and tried to keep it pretty open with them, and they've been really
Cool.
healthy.
Cool.
But I started really diving into my story of anorexia, which just share. And I did a post actually, like coming out of the closet 25 years later, my anorexia. And it was the first time I shared about my anorexia.
Wow.
And it was kind of somewhat viral. I don't know, for me, like here I was, and I got all these emails back and responses
But
about
you know
it.
what? No one talks about that.
Yeah.
Like people are desperate for having conversations that aren't talked about, but who's the people who are going to talk about it? We need to
And there's a
encourage
lot of
that. That's
people
amazing.
struggling,
For
and
real
yeah.
struggles. Yeah.
Yeah. So I had started getting these emails, and at the same time, me and my daughters went paddleboarding, and there's something about standing up on a paddleboard on the water that's very empowering.
Hmm.
And watching my girls do it, and we were out on the water and having this conversation, and it just kind of all fell into place. It was like, I would love to take girls out and do this with them, and we could have conversations about bodies, but it's so much better out on the water. And it was my desire to start like creating a bit more, like giving back to all that I had learned. And so yeah, I just had this idea. It was like kind of magical moment out on the water with my girls. I got very emotional, and I knew me at 12, I would have loved that experience and have someone like talk to me about my body and loving my body. I just knew how maybe that would have changed things. Who knows? So I came back to Nova Scotia, and like we didn't have funds. We were actually like in a big shift in our lives, and so I had this like dream to take people on paddleboards, and no clue really how I was going to do it. But the good thing is I was really connected to my story and really connected to this idea. And so I did a crowdfunding campaign and raised enough money for boards that like as soon as we got back, like it is
So
kind
did
of
you just say,
incredible.
I'm trying to help I'm helping girls. Oh, I need some money for some boards. And then people just started giving you money.
Yeah, like I shared my story of anorexia.
Yeah.
I shared about my desire to have body positive conversations and have like take girls out and help them feel really good in their bodies, and do things. And there's also like a ton of statistics of girls with, of course, eating disorders, but also of like dropping out of traditional sports and finding ways to help them. Like they end up they're one of the groups of girls, like grade 9 to 12 girls that, are a health risk. And so there's funding available, but I didn't know all this stuff. I had never run a business like this before. I'm a massage therapist. And at this time it was totally just led by this dream.
Love it
And
so much.
we got funded. I got enough money to buy the first set of boards. I got trained. Like I got trained as an instructor. And so Girls on Boards, we take girls now age 8 to 18 out on paddleboarding trips. So teach them basic paddleboarding, get out, paddle on the water, stand on the water, which is big, like just trusting yourself. And you get a really empowered feeling when you're standing on water. It's just incredible. It works every time. Pretty much, like just
it's almost
really
like it's almost like you would have to like give up control in some level. Like you almost have to trust, like how do you stand on that thing?
Like, and there's the whole vibe of like trusting yourself and finding your balance and feeling your power. So those messages are a metaphor that you get to live out on the board.
So are you doing like, is this like a retreat? Is it like a course? Is it like, what is it? Like obviously, is it a club?
Right now it's 3-hour experiences for the girls. So we do free trips for the girls. They come out, they learn paddleboarding. We stop and circle up, talk about bodies, talk about what feels good, talk about challenges. And the nice thing is all these girls are out here on the water without their phones, without interaction, without family. They're in nature. They've been immersed in it all. So we have really good conversations, and then send them back, and they can come back out with us again or bring a friend. But from that first summer, I started taking out groups, and so I did that all summer, just as like part-time whenever I could, but needed a way to get more funding. So we started doing like tours, and our tours are paid forward. A lot of women's groups and tours, but then we end up having the same conversations on the water too. Just
what do you mean tours? I don't know what I mean tours.
Like trips around here, but more like tourist.
Oh, I see. A little more of a, okay, cool. So it's a little more of an adventure, or so you're almost like a travel, but with a real conversations involved.
And the whole point is pay it forward. So they're supporting the girls, and we're having good conversations on the boards. And then we started opening up to a bunch of groups. So basically we finished 3 summers. We're heading into our 4th this year. So we've sponsored over 400 girls. And then we've taken like I don't know how many public, over 1,000 for sure, 2,000, which is good for Nova Scotia. But now we're starting to grow, which is fun, because this whole idea is definitely growing and evolving. I get women coming to me all the time wanting to be a part of it. I get more girls wanting to be a part of it. So just during COVID times.
Do you find so you got the grade 9 to 12 target. Do you find that moms need this conversation as well as the daughters?
Yeah, they are so excited.
So the girls on boards you could take a group of moms. Have you done that?
Oh yeah. Okay. Our women's trips. We've done mother-daughter.
Love it. Father-daughter? Have you done father-daughter?
I haven't yet, but you know what's neat is, last year I got paid to go take the school in Paris. So I went to Paris.
Amazing.
Took students from Paris on these paddleboarding experiences, but I got to take a group of boys too, which was awesome.
Yeah, like this is what I'm sitting here thinking. I'm like, these boys desperately need you to talk to these guys, because like I wish I had that as a young boy, like to have any kind of education on healthy education. I think it's a massive problem.
I get asked a lot. And anyways, the boys that came out, I mean, we had this amazing conversation about toxic masculinity and about, expectations and their bodies too. And so it was a really nice eye opener for me. And also, it was one of my top experiences. Of course, I was paddling in Paris too.
No doubt. Just the whole thing's exciting. Well. So do you see yourself, and I know you can't, I think life is more of a flow and a changing thing, but is this the direction for you?
Like I have just finished this year teaching a set of new leaders. It ended up being because of COVID. We were like home, and I was like, okay, what can I do to give back more? So
build your leaders.
We built it was super fun just to put it out there as an experiment. And now we're going to have people in Australia, across Canada, and in UK, and they're just finishing up the leadership training and to be like licensed providers of our Girls on Boards trips. So
is this a for-profit or non-profit, or what's it like?
The girls part is non-profit, but it's actually social enterprise is the model. So it's pay it forward. Our biggest measures are in impact.
Of course.
But of course we have to be sustainable.
Well, that's why I'm an entrepreneur. I love the business side of it. Everything I do is to impact people, but there's amazing amount of structures and stuff. I get all into that kind of mind as well. I've got the two sides, my heart and head get right in there. So
so that's been learning for me too, just how to map it out. To help people to bring this and expand it and reach more people, but and bring paddleboarding to different areas. So that is helping us, like the ultimate, because this whole having these conversations like we're having now, like open, on the water and out in nature is
So
a
cool.
wonderful platform. And yeah, that's what's exciting. And I get excited about this because just last night we were like, each of these new leaders was doing like a virtual facilitation of a group conversation. And they're all bringing their self. And my whole thing with Girls on Boards is we don't give advice. We share our stories and, you know, create safe space for
Yeah.
everybody to share.
Yeah.
So that's the premise. Every time I went out with girls, I'd share my story of my struggles as a teenager and open the door for them to share theirs, but like no pressure and no advice. And so last night, these women are like finishing up running a little virtual session with different groups, and they're sharing their stories, and they're, you know, creating that kind of space, and they're going to take it out into their communities and create partnerships and take more, you know, creating it just
You're
got me
just
so
watching this grow, hey?
yeah. And they all bring their unique piece to it, and some, you know, stories of feeling powerless or being in abusive relationships, or
Wow.
you know, just
And these girls, are these older girls then, or like the leaders?
the
Like,
leaders. Yes.
so these are
Yeah.
women.
Mhm.
So can I ask you a question? So all I want is you to hang out with my daughter. So that's just so you know, I've got a 14-year-old daughter. I think
Yeah.
that Scarlett and I have a really cool relationship. I'm taking her on a father-daughter retreat to Vancouver in a couple weeks. Just gonna go map out a retreat that I'm putting together. So I built a life where I get to charge that onto a business write-off and
Yeah.
take my daughter. So, but if you were to give her advice, I know you don't know her, so it'd be top level. I get it. But I think you really understand girls. If you were to say, hey, you know, some advice, she's going into grade 9. She loves the boys. She's got some friends that are sometimes questionable, but she's usually a leader and an influencer. She's super confident. But what kind of advice, top level, would you give my daughter, if that's possible?
Yeah.
You have no context, I understand, but
Yeah. I think the biggest piece, and I get is stop worrying about what anybody else thinks. Like that's a huge thing is in teenage years, and it's a huge thing that comes up over and over in conversation. And it's how much we're affected by other people's opinions, and how that's the scariest thing is worrying, is like disappointing people or being made fun of, and how much it stops us from doing the things we really want to do.
mm,
So yeah, you ask women, what do you wish you could tell your teenage self? And it's like, you know, love yourself and stop worrying about what other people think, or don't do things just to please other people. That's another way to frame it. Don't do things just to please other people.
wow, yeah.
Yeah.
It seems so simple, hey?
Mm.
You know what I mean?
But
It
we
seems so
care
simple.
so deeply about what other people think. Like
Yeah.
you know, that was my biggest pain, was displeasing my parents. Of course,
Yeah.
I did have some fears of hell, but I will be honest, I was probably more scared of disappointing my parents than about going to hell.
I know someone very close to me that has the same belief system. Disappointing God, but disappointing the parents. Like that's just, how would you help someone through that? Like how does that change? Because that's like that's
I
just like,
think mhm, reframing for me was always like, my kids, how would I want my kids? Or, you know, I talk to girls about the bully in the mirror,
yeah.
and how you know, that voice in your head, is it a bully or is it a best friend? Like, would you say the things that you say to yourself to your best friend? Never. You would never say those things out loud. A
For
lot of
sure.
times that morning conversation with your mirror, you like, and start listening to that voice. Is it a bully or is it a friend? Like that is a huge awareness. So yeah, worrying
Yeah.
about that's another thing we talk about in the
Yeah.
conversations, like who's
Love
in
it.
the bully or a friend. And yeah.
I love it so much, Mia. I believe that we are going to be friends. I'm going to
Yeah,
be tracking
I
you
would love to
down.
speak about, you know what, there are I think though the closest right now for you in Alberta is actually in Invermere, now that I'm thinking about it. I'm not sure. I did have someone.
That is about an hour away. Yeah.
Okay.
Where I'm at. Yeah.
So
Invermere.
yeah, there's
Invermere. Like, who lives in Invermere?
we are gonna have girls on boards there and Vancouver, Victoria.
Let me
Yeah.
know. Let me know. I got this crazy heart for that age group. Like, I'm not even joking. Back in the day when I was totally hardcore Christian and everything, I spoke at camps and I had some, like, it was like amazing. And then having, like, there was time, this other time I was at a skate park and this boy, he was 12 years old. He comes and I see him and he's getting into it with a 16-year-old. And he's like saying, he's like, F you effing guy. And then, so there's this big fight. My buddy's like, hey, dude, watch it. But I saw what was going on. He was defending my daughter, but he was a real dick, like this 12-year-old, but I just knew what was going on. So I had this crazy welling up and I said, hey, come here. I said, I know who you are. I said, I bet you have a total effed up life. I said, I bet you at home, your home life sucks. I said, I've been to jail, been on drugs, I've been to rehab, but I also made a shit ton of money. And I said, I've overcome a lot of stuff. And I just kind of just pushed it at him. And he just broke down. He goes, yeah, my dad passed away. And my mom doesn't spend any time with me. And I'm pretty much on my own. And I just, like, we're in tears and we just, I get it. Like, I get it. And it was like this thing. I'm like, this is what I need to do in my life. Like, there's these, like, I can get those guys. I got them. And so when I hear you talking about working with girls, and I guess I should say thank you, because it just keeps on waking me up, because there's like this untapped mission that's just in me, and it gets me like core deep when I see these kids. That age group is always that grade 9 to high school. That's like that is that age group.
Really tough.
For sure.
And that's the thing I've learned is, like, it's not about advice, it's about listening. Like, always. Yeah.
I think the thing is they need to know that you get them. Yeah. I don't think anyone gets them. And I think that's what the reaction that I get whenever I have an interaction with a young kid. If there's that, like, oh, he gets me, because their parents don't get them. And that's why when I'm like, oh, I want you to talk to my daughter, because I'm like, you'll get her. You know what I mean?
Well, we're all kids. No. And funny enough, I'm so excited because there's a lot of girls, 20 to 30, really interested in being leaders, and they have so much to give, and they have so much empathy. There's a really good connection there too. So I love supporting them too, because that bridge is like the big sister bridge is really powerful too.
This is going somewhere. Yeah, you know it too. Yeah, I think you do. I think I love it. I didn't realize it was I've just seen it on Facebook, right? I didn't know. I'm so glad you got to share this. So, well, we're kind of, sorry, go ahead.
I just said it's been very organic, and I continue to just follow that path of, okay, that door's opening, we're going to go there.
Wow.
That way. Yeah.
I love that. Well, it's been great. We're probably past how long most people listen. So the people that are listening now are the people that are getting it. So I truly appreciate you coming on the show, Mia. I mean it. I'm glad I get to know you. I'm glad that the world gets to see what's going on. I think you have so much to give. I love your heart, your spirit. It's definitely real to me. So I really thank you for coming on.
This has been really nice. Thank you. You're a good heart opener. That's good.
Awesome. Thanks so much, Mia.
Hey,
we'll stop the recording now, and then we'll chat again. Just to hold on a second. Okay, we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for coming on. Okay, cheers.